The china shattered against the wall behind my head, missing me by inches. My mother-in-law Laura's face was contorted with rage as she stood at the head of our dining room table, her finger pointed at me like a weapon. "You have no right to raise Emma in this family," she spat. "You know nothing about our traditions, our culture, our ways. My name is Yesenia, and until 5 minutes ago, I thought I was hosting a normal Sunday dinner for my husband's family. Now, with 12 pairs of eyes fixed on me and my 8-year-old daughter crying in the corner, I realized how wrong I'd been." "Laura, please," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emma is my daughter. I've been raising her for 8 years. "Exactly," Laura cut me off. 8 years of watching you butcher our heritage. 8 years of watching you raise her like some outsider." I looked to my husband Omar for support, but he sat there, silent and stone-faced, staring at his half-eaten meal. The betrayal stung worse than Laura's words. "Mom," Emma whimpered from her corner. "Please don't yell at Mommy." Laura's expression softened as she turned to my daughter. "Oh, sweetheart, this is exactly why we need to intervene. You deserve to know your true heritage, not this watered-down version your mother's been feeding you." "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked, my hands trembling under the table. Laura straightened her spine, smoothed her expensive blouse, and delivered the blow she'd clearly been planning for weeks. "The family council will be meeting next month. I'm filing for cultural guardianship of Emma. Either you prove you can properly raise her in our traditions, or we'll ensure she's raised by someone who can." The room fell silent. Even Emma's sniffles stopped. "You can't do that," I whispered. But Ruby, our family friend, shook her head slightly from across the table. I realized with horror that they could. "Watch me," Laura smiled, a cold, triumphant thing. "Omar agrees with me, don't you, son?" I turned to my husband, waiting for him to defend me, to stand up to his mother. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, "Maybe Mom has a point, Yesenia. We've been too casual about Emma's cultural education." The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles white. Through the haze of betrayal and shock, I heard Laura continuing her tirade about tradition and responsibility. But all I could focus on was Emma's terrified face and the realization that these people, this family, were trying to take my daughter away from me. As conversations erupted around the table, I made a silent vow. They wanted tradition. They wanted culture. I'd give them more than they bargained for. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. 3 days after the dinner disaster, I found myself on Ruby's doorstep, clutching a cup of gas station coffee like a lifeline. She opened the door before I could knock, her silver-streaked hair loose around her shoulders. "I wondered when you'd show up," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "I didn't know where else to go," I admitted, following her into a living room filled with old photographs and artifacts I'd never understood. "Laura's already filed the paperwork. Omar won't even look at me, and Emma—" My voice cracked. "Emma keeps asking if she did something wrong." Ruby settled into an ancient armchair and fixed me with a penetrating stare. "So what are you going to do about it?" "Fight back, but I need your help." I leaned forward. "You know the traditions better than anyone except Laura. Teach me. Everything." "It won't be easy," Ruby warned. "Laura's been planning this for years. She's got the family council in her pocket." "I don't care. I'll learn everything. The language, the customs, the history. Whatever it takes." Ruby stood suddenly and walked to an old chest in the corner. "Before we start, there's something you should see." She pulled out a leather-bound book, its pages yellow with age. This was my grandmother's diary. She kept records of everything, including some things Laura would rather stay buried. As Ruby flipped through the pages, a yellowed photograph slipped out. It showed a young woman in traditional dress, but something about her features seemed wrong for the time period. "That's Laura's grandmother," Ruby said quietly. "The one she claims gave her all her authority over family traditions." She tapped the photo. "Notice anything strange?" I studied the image closer. The dress. It looks newer than the background. "Exactly." Ruby's eyes glinted. "Laura's grandmother wasn't born into the traditions. She married in, just like you." Laura's been fabricating her authority for years. My hands shook as I took the diary. Why hasn't anyone said anything? Fear, pride, politics. Ruby shrugged. But you could change everything. A knock at the door made us both jump. Ruby quickly hid the diary and went to answer it. I heard Bobby's voice in the hallway. Is Yesenia here? Laura's called an emergency family meeting. She's moving up the council date. My heart pounded, but instead of fear, I felt a surge of determination. When? 2 weeks, Bobby said, looking uncomfortable. Look, Yesenia, I know we haven't always gotten along, but this isn't right. I stood up straighter. Tell Laura I'll be there. And Ruby? I turned to my newfound ally. We start now. Ruby nodded, a fierce smile on her face. First lesson. In our culture, revenge is best served with perfect etiquette. Your accent is still too heavy on the third tone. Ruby corrected as I practiced the traditional language for the 5th hour straight. My tongue felt like lead, but I pressed on, determined to master every syllable. The diary lay open beside us, its pages revealing more secrets with each passing day. I ran my finger along a particularly interesting entry. Ruby, look at this. It mentions a ceremony in 1962 where Laura's mother was denied a position on the council. Ruby leaned closer, adjusting her reading glasses. Yes, I remember that day. She was caught trying to alter the family records. Laura never mentions it, of course. A knock interrupted us. Emma peeked around the door, her backpack clutched to her chest. Mommy, Grandma Laura is outside. My heart jumped, but I kept my voice steady. Baby, go to Ruby's study room, okay? Remember what we practiced? Emma nodded solemnly and disappeared down the hallway, reciting traditional phrases under her breath. I'd been teaching her everything I learned, turning our forced separation into special mother-daughter moments. Laura burst in without waiting for an invitation. Really, Yesenia? Hiding behind Ruby now? I'm not hiding, I replied in the traditional language, watching her eyes widen slightly. I'm learning. There's a difference. A few memorized phrases won't save you. Laura sneered, but I caught the flicker of uncertainty in her expression. The council meeting is in 9 days. You can't possibly... Can't possibly what? I interrupted, picking up the diary. Learn enough to expose how your family really came into their position? Laura's face went pale. Where did you get that? The same place you should have. From people who actually respect our traditions. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Did you know your grandmother's wedding photo was doctored? Ruby's grandmother wrote all about it. You're lying, Laura hissed, but her hands were shaking. The council might be interested in seeing the real records. I met her gaze steadily. Unless you'd like to reconsider this whole custody challenge? Laura's composure cracked for just a moment before she schooled her features. You have no idea what you're dealing with. She turned to leave but stopped at the door. Oh, and Omar's moving back home tomorrow. To his real home with his real family. The words were meant to break me, but I smiled. Tell him to check the study desk before he goes. There's something there he should see. After Laura left, Ruby touched my arm. What did you leave for Omar? His grandfather's last letter, I said quietly. The one from the diary where he warns about Laura's manipulation of the family records. Omar deserves to know the truth about his own heritage. Ruby nodded approvingly. You're learning faster than I expected. I have to, I replied, picking up the language textbook again. Emma's future depends on it. Your pronunciation is perfect, Hugh said, setting down his teacup. The elder council member had arrived unannounced at Ruby's house, catching me mid-lesson. But can you explain the significance of the autumn equinox ceremony? I recited the history without hesitation, watching his bushy eyebrows rise higher with each correct detail. Ruby sat in the corner, trying to hide her proud smile. And the traditional greeting to the ancestors? Hugh pressed. I performed the complex series of gestures and phrases, my movements fluid after countless hours of practice. When I finished, Hugh cleared his throat. Laura won't be pleased to hear about this, he said, stroking his beard. She's been telling everyone you're refusing to learn, hiding away in shame. Of course she has, I replied, pouring more tea in the traditional way Ruby had taught me. Just like she's been hiding the truth about her grandmother's photos. Hugh's hand froze midway to his cup. What photos? Before I could answer, the front door slammed. Omar stormed in, his face a storm of emotions, clutching his grandfather's letter. Is it true? He demanded, waving the paper. Everything in this letter. About Mom changing the records, about grandmother's photos? Omar, Hugh said sharply. Show respect in the presence of an elder. My husband stopped short, noticing Hugh for the first time. His face reddened as he performed the traditional greeting, which I'd never seen him do before. Uncle Hugh, I apologize, Omar said, bowing slightly. But I need to know. Has my mother been lying to us all this time? Hugh exchanged glances with Ruby before speaking. Your mother has always been selective about which traditions she chooses to honor. And my wife? Omar turned to me, really looking at me for the first time in weeks. When did you learn all this? While you were believing your mother's lies about me, I answered in the traditional language. While you let her try to take our daughter away. Omar sank into a chair, the letter crumpling in his grip. I've been such a fool. Yes, Ruby said bluntly. You have. The council meeting is in 4 days, Hugh announced, standing. Laura has gathered significant support, but... He looked at me thoughtfully. Perhaps it's time for some truth to come to light. Uncle Hugh, Omar started, but Hugh raised his hand. Your wife has shown more respect for our traditions in 2 weeks than Laura has in 20 years. He turned to me. Continue your studies, Yesenia, and bring Emma to tomorrow's lesson. It's time she learned from someone who truly values our heritage. After Hugh left, Omar tried to speak, but I cut him off. Save it. If you want to make things right, start by standing with me at the council meeting. He nodded slowly. I will. I promise. Good, Ruby interjected, because Laura just texted. She's calling an emergency pre-council meeting tonight. The emergency meeting was held in Laura's oversized living room, where family portraits, carefully curated to emphasize her version of the family history, lined the walls. I sat straight-backed on the antique sofa, Emma pressed against my side while Laura paced before us. This is a farce, she announced to the gathered family members. 2 weeks of lessons doesn't make her one of us. Then test me, I challenged, switching to the traditional language. Any aspect of our culture you choose. Laura's eyes narrowed. Fine. Perform the blessing for the new year. I stood, guiding Emma to stand beside me. Together, we performed the complex ritual perfectly, our movements synchronized. When we finished, Bobby let out a low whistle of appreciation. Now explain the significance of each gesture, Laura demanded, her voice tight. I did, adding historical context Ruby had taught me. Of course, the hand placement was different before your grandmother modified it in the doctored photos of 1943. A sharp intake of breath from several family members. Laura's face went from red to white. You dare? I dare to speak the truth, I interrupted. Something you might try sometime. Mom, Omar stepped forward. Enough. I've seen the evidence. The letters. The photos. Those are family secrets, Laura hissed. Exactly, I said. Family secrets. The ones you used to control everyone. But guess what? I'm family too, and I've learned more than just ceremonies. Hugh cleared his throat from his corner seat. Laura, you should withdraw your challenge. Never, she spat. The council will hear everything, I promised. Every detail from Ruby's grandmother's diary, every manipulated record, every lie. Emma tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, can I show Grandma the song you taught me? Before Laura could object, Emma began singing the traditional harvest prayer. Not the simplified version Laura had taught Omar, but the original version I'd learned from the diary. The room fell silent except for Emma's clear voice. Laura sank into a chair, her face ashen. Impossible, she whispered. That version was lost. No, Ruby spoke up. You just told everyone it was lost, like so many other things you've hidden. The council meeting is in 3 days, Hugh announced, standing. Laura, I strongly suggest you reconsider your position. Some truths are better revealed gently than forced into the open. Laura's eyes darted around the room, seeing the shifting loyalties, the questioning looks. Finally, she lifted her chin defiantly. The challenge stands, she declared. But remember, Yesenia, you're playing with forces you don't understand. No, Laura, I replied, holding Emma closer. I understand perfectly. The question is, do you? As we left, Bobby caught my arm. Watch your back, he whispered. She's got one more card to play. She's going to try to prove you're not eligible for family membership, Bobby explained, pacing Ruby's kitchen the night before the council meeting. Laura's been making calls all day. How? I asked, looking up from the traditional ceremonial dress I was mending. I married Omar legally. Emma is my daughter. Ruby burst through the door, clutching her phone. She found your birth certificate. My hands froze on the fabric. What? Laura's claiming your adoption invalidates your right to participate in family traditions, Ruby said, her voice shaking with anger. She's trying to use our own laws against you. Omar slammed his fist on the table. That's ridiculous. The adoption laws were changed decades ago. Were they? Bobby asked quietly. Or did Laura just tell everyone they were? The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Emma, who had been practicing her calligraphy nearby, looked up with worried eyes. Is Grandma Laura trying to say I'm not really your daughter, Mommy? I pulled her into my lap, fighting back tears. No, baby. She's trying to say I'm not really my parents' daughter, but she's wrong. We need to find the original law books, Ruby declared. The real ones, not Laura's convenient translations. I know where they are, Omar said suddenly. In the family temple. Mom never thought I paid attention, but I used to hide there as a kid. There's a room full of records she doesn't know I know about. Bobby checked his watch. The temple closes in an hour. We'd never make it. Unless, Ruby smiled slyly, someone who knows the traditional evening prayers were to request a private ceremony. All eyes turned to me. 20 minutes later, I knelt before the temple altar, reciting ancient prayers while Omar and Bobby slipped into the records room. The elderly temple keeper nodded approvingly at my pronunciation. Your mother-in-law said you refused to learn our ways, he commented. Laura says many things, I replied in the traditional language. Not all of them honor our ancestors' truth. His eyebrows shot up at my formal phrasing. Before he could respond, Omar emerged, clutching a dusty volume. Found it, he whispered when we were safely in the car. The original family laws. And guess what? Adoption is specifically mentioned as a sacred bond, equal to blood. Laura must have known, Ruby said, flipping through the pages. That's why she kept these hidden. Tomorrow, I said, gripping the ceremonial dress in my lap. We end this. Not just for me and Emma, but for everyone Laura's ever lied to. Be careful, Bobby warned. She looked almost happy at dinner tonight. That's never good. Let her try whatever she wants, I replied, touching the diary hidden in my bag. I've got something better than tricks. I've got the truth. The council chamber fell silent as Laura strode to the center, a thick folder in her hands. 7 elders, including Hugh, sat in a semicircle before us, their faces impassive. Honored elders, Laura began, her voice dripping with false humility. I bring evidence that Yesenia has no right to raise my granddaughter in our traditions. She pulled out my birth certificate with a flourish. She is adopted. Our laws clearly state— Which laws would those be? I interrupted, stepping forward in my ceremonial dress. The ones you rewrote, or the original ones from the temple? Laura's smile faltered slightly. I don't know what you mean. Omar stood beside me, holding the ancient law book. I think you do, Mother. Should I read the true law about adoption? The one you've been hiding for 20 years? This is ridiculous, Laura snapped. These attempts to slander me? Slander? Ruby emerged from the back, carrying her grandmother's diary. Like the slander you spread about your own grandmother? Shall we show everyone the original wedding photo? Laura lunged for the diary, but Hugh's voice cracked through the air like thunder. Enough. The room froze. Hugh stood, his authority filling the space. Laura, we've watched you manipulate our traditions for years. We've seen the evidence, the altered records, the hidden laws, the lies. You can't prove anything, Laura hissed. Actually, I said, switching to the most formal version of the traditional language. We can prove everything. I turned to the elders. I request permission to present the true history of our family's traditions. Hugh nodded, and for the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything. The original laws, the altered photos, the hidden records. I spoke in the ancient dialect, performing the ceremonial gestures perfectly. When I finished, even Laura had sunk into her chair, defeated. Mom? Emma's small voice broke the silence. She walked to the center, wearing the traditional dress I'd mended. I want to show you something. Before anyone could stop her, Emma began performing the most sacred of our family's dances, one that Laura had claimed was lost generations ago. Her movements were perfect, each gesture expressing the ancient story exactly as Ruby's grandmother had described it in her diary. Tears streamed down Ruby's face. My grandmother would be so proud, she whispered. Hugh stood again. The council has heard enough. Laura, your challenge is not only rejected, but you are hereby removed from your position as keeper of traditions. He turned to me. Yesenia, you have shown us the true meaning of family honor. The council recognizes your right not only to raise Emma in our traditions, but to help restore what was nearly lost. Laura staggered to her feet. You can't. It's over, Mother, Omar said firmly. You've lost. As the elders filed out, Emma ran into my arms. We did it, Mommy. Yes, baby, I whispered, holding her tight. We did. The autumn festival lanterns cast a warm glow across the temple courtyard as I helped Emma adjust her ceremonial sash. Around us, family members bustled about, preparing for the evening's celebrations. Is Grandma Laura coming? Emma asked, fidgeting with her sleeve. I don't know, baby, I answered honestly. Since the council meeting, Laura had retreated to her house, refusing to speak to anyone. But look who is here. Bobby approached, carrying a stack of newly printed family history books. Fresh from the printer, every family gets one, with all the real stories, traditions, and photos restored. Including the real photo of Laura's grandmother? Omar asked, joining us. Everything, Bobby confirmed. No more secrets. A hush fell over the courtyard. Laura stood at the entrance, looking smaller somehow without her usual air of authority. She clutched something in her hands. I found this, she said, her voice wavering as she approached us, while I was cleaning out my things. She held out an old photograph. It's my mother, the day she was adopted into the family. I'd forgotten how happy she was. I took the photo carefully. In it, a young woman beamed at the camera, surrounded by her new family. I became so focused on protecting our traditions, Laura continued. I forgot what they were meant to protect. Family. All of it. The ceremonies, the laws, they're about bringing people together, not keeping them apart. Emma slipped her small hand into Laura's. Does this mean you're not mad at Mommy anymore? Laura knelt down to Emma's level. No, sweetheart, I'm not mad. She glanced up at me. I'm sorry. To both of you. There's a lot to make right, I said firmly. I know. Laura straightened up. That's why I'm here. The festival needs its traditional opening ceremony, and for the first time in 30 years, we're going to do it the right way. She turned to the gathering crowd. The real way. Hugh appeared beside us. Then we'll need our new tradition keeper. He nodded to me. Yesenia? As I took my place at the temple steps, I saw Omar beaming with pride, Ruby wiping away tears, and Bobby distributing the true history books to eager family members. Even Laura stood quietly, watching with what looked like respect. I raised my hands and Emma stepped up beside me, mirroring my gesture. Together, we began the ancient blessing, our voices carrying across the courtyard. One by one, family members joined in, the words flowing pure and true, exactly as they had been passed down through generations. This was my revenge. Not in destroying Laura's power, but in restoring what she'd nearly destroyed. In teaching my daughter that family means more than blood or birth certificates. In proving that sometimes the best way to fight back is to preserve what others would tear down. This was our victory. This was our truth. This was our family.